Welcome to the Sustaining Change 2022 Virtual Institute. The prevention team is excited to launch this first ever hybrid institute. We are honored that you chose to spend your day with TASA, and we hope that you enjoy all that is in store. Today is a day to grow where you're planted. You will learn from some amazing TASA staff, participate in a live streamed youth panel discussion, and build community with other prevention educators and advocates across Texas.
If you are here and doing this work, you are amazing. You are valued and you are essential. The past couple years have taken a toll on so many of us personally and professionally. With that said, we have seen creativity and adaptability burst and blossom out of our communities amidst the storms of chaos.
In addition to dealing with the impacts of COVID on ourselves and our loved ones, we have run into countless obstacles to starting and maintaining programming. Even with all of this, prevention workers, advocates, and counselors alike have shown their perseverance and creativity in leading some amazing projects and caring for our communities. Thank you for being you.
We hope you can find a comfy seat, grab a pen and paper, sip on your favorite beverage, and enjoy all the information that's going to be brought to you today. Before we pass the mic over to your host, we'd like to share our deepest gratitude to our interpreters who are helping us take a small step toward language justice. Now back to your host, Emiliano. The virtual stage is now yours.
It was very cute. Thank you so much for your patience. We hope that you enjoyed that video. And again, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We encourage you to engage with us as much as possible. We know that we are not with each other in person, but we are here together and we are connected. And that is the theme for this year's Virtual Institute. We want to encourage you to ask questions, to introduce yourself in the chat, to let folks know who you are and where you're participating from. We want to encourage you to engage with us as much throughout the day. We want to encourage you to share on social media any of your insights, anything that you're learning from today's speakers. We definitely want to encourage you to share that. Also, as a reminder, please complete the evaluation at the end of the Institute. Your feedback is really important to us. We want to ensure that we continue to improve these virtual offerings in the future. So again, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And I'm very honored to have to pass the mic to Tracy Wright, who is our keynote speaker. All of you should have received and hopefully have had an opportunity to review Tracy's bio. But Tracy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all doing? I'm so excited to be here with you this morning. Thank you so much to the TASA staff who put this together. I hope you as members and supporters of TASA understand that this is a great opportunity. I don't think I've ever done a hybrid before. I feel all famous this morning. Oh, yeah, this is amazing. I am excited to be here with you all. Again, my name is Tracy Wright. I work at the North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have like 3 jobs at the coalition, and I want to talk a little bit about those because I believe in bringing my full self and full experiences to the space, and I invite and encourage you all to do the same. One of my roles is to work with the 56 state and territorial anti-sexual assault coalitions to help them to build their capacity, to support their membership, to build statewide campaigns, And so I've been in that role for 18 years. I'm almost legal in coalition world, right? My second job is there's a lot of information out in the universe about campus sexual assault, but there's very little about the impact of sexual assault on historically Black colleges and universities. And in North Carolina, there are 10 historically Black colleges and universities. And so my role is to provide culturally specific, culturally affirming resources to those 10 historically Black colleges and universities across the state of North Carolina. And my third job is probably the most important. And one thing I forgot to share yesterday is that I actually got my insight into youth work from TASA. I got a chance to come many moons ago to the STAR project, and all of the historical pieces of our project, which is called the Young Advocates Institute, really got its grounding in philosophies and framing from TASA. And so I run a project called the Young Advocates Institute that houses and trains 200 teenagers ages 13 through 17 on a college campus through a summer learning initiative that's rooted in pop culture and hip hop culture. So I'm bringing my full self and all those experiences to the space. And so again, thank you all so much for this opportunity. I really like to invite you all into a conversation. I hope that you will ask questions, give feedback in the chat. Um, and again, thank you all so much. All hail the survivors, the preventionists, the advocates, the healers, the BeeHive, and the badasses. This is for you. Let's remember who we are. Let's pivot. Let's prepare for the Renaissance. I want to welcome you to the reunion. And again, I love being here in Texas because every time I'm in Texas, shit gets real. Right? I love it here. And thank you all so much for the opportunity. I appreciate and want to say explicitly, just like your coalition has said to you, every advocate, every stakeholder, every ally, every person working on prevention, I am so grateful for you. I appreciate you. I want you to know that you are doing absolutely amazing work. It has been hard, and it is still hard. You are enough. You are doing the best that you can. And I hope that you all give yourself the grace that you give to others. And so I'm from a small community not too far from here, originally raised. My parents still live there. My sister lives there, Bossier City, Louisiana. And everything I learned about facilitation and public speaking and leadership, I learned while in the Black Baptist Church. So I'm going to invite you all to do something that we do in my church, and it's called Pass the Peace, right? And so we're going to pass the peace virtually. And so what it means to pass the peace, first, it'd be great if folks could just drop their names and where organization you are with into the chat. And everybody, let's just say good morning to each other, greet each other. Good morning, Emiliano. Good morning, Denise. There we go. Pass the peace. We got it. Let's do it. There we go, Lena. Good morning to our interpreters. ASL, closed caption. Good morning, Courtney. You're looking fabulous this morning. Yes. Bonnie, I see you. Thank you, Miss Rhonda. Okay. Stewart. Mm-hmm. Denise, yes. Okay. Kate, yes. Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. You look good. Good to see you. How your family doing? How the kids? Oh, good to see you. Good to see you. Yes. There we go. This the reunion. It was at my family reunion. We be passing a piece. Yes. I hope I do. Oh, I am sweet. Yes. You said my family reunion. We doing what? The electric slide right about now. Yeah. There we go. I see you. There we go. Oh, good eats. Absolutely. Who on the grill? What you making? Courtney, you tried to give me some recipes last. Courtney was trying to help me out last night. Be like, yo, she was providing really great technical assistance. Oh, things I could cook in the air fryer. And I appreciate that. So, like, that's the kind of stuff, passing. That's the kind of stuff you do at the reunion. Yes. Yes. Good to see you. Thank you so much for doing me that solid. Oh, that makes me feel good. Absolutely. Thank you. That was good. That felt good too. Didn't that feel good? I always want to acknowledge joy when we can get it, right? Yes, I gotta get all the joy I can get, right? Because it's rough out here, boy. I tell you that. Um, Understand this. I know that each day, legions of catalysts for change, revolutionary thinkers and advocates rise and rally in hopes of creating a world free of sexual violence. I believe they are guided by a pledge of allegiance rooted in starving the isms that feed its existence and being the locus to institutions where such oppression harvest and manifest. We in the anti-sexual violence movement are summoned by our oath to survivors. Survivors who are brave, who do their best to navigate life, the complexities of trauma, inflation, pandemic, inflation, rogue policies, communities that still don't believe survivors, yet they thrive. And in moment by moment, minute by minute, they walk fully upright in You Won't Break My Soul. Hey, right? For real. There we go. There we go. They singing in here. I see y'all. Don't want their talents out right now. Like Denise and Courtney, they going on tour later this year. They do they do retirement parties, baby showers, bar mitzvahs, like whatever you need. Like, thank you. I'm their agent. I take 50%. No, but for real, like You Won't Break My Soul. What a charge, right? And I think understanding this, like in a popular context, right? As we know, music to be, especially um, being here in Texas, like I thought that was cool. And also like being here in Houston, home, of Queen Bee, in popular context, people really see this song as an anthem. They also see it as being reflective of the current times we living in, and a really an ode to the 90s house style jam that really connects um, to Black and queer communities. It's actually number one on the album called Renaissance by Houston's own Beyonce. In this space, I really think it is an adage that shapes our work. It's our touchstone. It's really the reason why we're in the anti-sexual violence movement, because we stand in the gaps for healing for survivors who have had, in some regards, some of the most egregious violations, and yet and still they make a commitment to continue in life and reach out for supports, right? That's why we're here. That's why we have an opportunity to serve in this capacity, because of the beauty and the resiliency and the hope of survivors who say to communities, violators, right, loved ones, harm doers, you won't break my soul. And I think really sitting with folks who do prevention for the past 2 days and being here with you all now, I think that we talk about our movement as, um, a space that evolves and changes. And I think usually when we kind of think about the body of the movement and philosophies of the movement, I really believe that we all show up and do this work centered on the survivor, right? I think that's the heart of our work. And I think that the love and the accountability values and tenets of our work really are rooted in prevention. And when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about love not as a feeling, but as an action that is free from abuse and that intentionally seeks out um, to care for others. And I think that's what prevention work is able to do. I think that when you start thinking about where we're kind of sitting, I do want to acknowledge that we have been in pandemic for 881 days. And I think that is just fascinating. And for me, I start pandemic from March 13, 2020 to present date. And I think about just how pandemic, right, really created a space where we all have experienced a great deal of collective trauma. We are all exhausted. Um, a great deal of frustration is looming, uncertainty in so many facets of life, which is deeply connected to understanding that right now, the full spectrum of the anti-sexual violence movement is literally being rebuilt. I think one thing that we can all acknowledge from the pandemic is that it deeply exposed um, who had access to what, um, the have and the have nots, and really set course for us to reimagine how we do this work. I think that in the beginning days of pandemic, folks were saying, "Oh, I just can't wait till we go back to normal." And I think for me, I always sat in a lot of discomfort sometimes with that, because I realized and understood that by way of pandemic, we understood that normal didn't work for everybody, right? And I think that when we think about reimagining services, we do have to think about the ever-changing, emerging needs that COVID really exposed. And I think that it ties nicely into um, the title of Beyonce's album Renaissance. I think that's where we are. And Renaissance is a renewal of life, vigor, interest, rebirth, and revival. It also reminds me of Gwendolyn Brooks' poem, Speech to the Young. She says that even if you are not ready for day, it cannot always be night. And I think about how do we get there? And when I think about how do we get to the light, I think it requires us to both pivot from and posture towards a couple of things, right? I think that we have to pivot from personal biases and stereotypes and tropes that have been created that are harmful, right? I think we also have to pivot from policy and power structures that harm. Yeah, yeah. And here's the other cool thing that I hope you all notice. You all are all preventionists. Everything that I'm talking about starts with the letter P. I think that we also have to pivot away from performative allyship. And I'll sit here for a second and share lived experiences is that, you know, I do work with a great amount of coalitions, and performative allyship is a space where I think people really do and really have the possibilities and potential to leave the work sad and harmed. And when I'm talking about performative allyship, I want to lift up that being an ally, right, is something in my lived experience is something that is earned daily. And it's earned daily in practices. It's learned daily in respecting boundaries. It is learned daily in unlearning and relearning. And it's also learned in accountability. And so oftentimes organizations, I think, especially in my lived experience with working a great deal with communities of color, um, we have had the tendency to make the assumption that all anti-violence, anti-gender-based violence organizations have a commitment to dismantling racism and anti-oppression work. Um, because it's easy to say that, it's easy to sign on to a statement that says that you are. However, it really is, how does an organization show up not only for its staff and but how does it show up for its community, and really thinking about the root causes of sexual violence and gender-based violence, which I believe are racism and oppression. So how are those philosophies woven into the thread of an organization? And oftentimes, performative allyship comes when it is a declaration that we do believe that racism and oppression are issues, but it often lacks in the implementation and policies and procedures and processes. And so really, we have to pivot from performative allyship. We also have to pivot away from the proverbial table. Oftentimes in conversations with communities, we're often sitting and saying like, oh, who's missing from the table? Um, and I always challenge that question and say, okay, are you looking for folks who have the same thoughts and values as you do to sit at the table? Or are you looking to hear from varied perspectives, varied lived experiences? And how are you making sure that the table has accessibility to the people who are impacted by the decisions that are made at the table? Um, I used to say this in previous keynotes, and I feel moved to say it here. It often says there's an adage out there that says if you're not uh, at the table, you're on the menu. Right? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that means that people are making decisions about you if you're not at the table. And I'll say this again, I think, we have to pivot away from this proverbial table and explicitly, I also think, and this goes for me too, is that some of us have been at some tables way too long. And it's time for us to get up and to exit, to make room for others' voices, to be heard, and understand that we all have something to contribute to this also complex problem. So, the proverbial table we have to dismantle it, um, and make it better for accessibility and a multitude of voices, so that we can better understand each other. Y'all still rocking with me? There we go. All right. I see. I see. And then we get into, again, back to you won't break my soul. And then when you get to that chorus, it say, I'm telling everybody, everybody. That sure sounds like prevention to me. Y'all be telling the people. Like we is going to all the awareness campaigns, um, promotional items at my coalition. It all comes from our prevention team. You want an ink pen with NC Casa name on it? The prevention team bought it. You want a t-shirt? A bag. We also used to buy teddy bears. Like, yes, the prevention team, we put out everything. And I think that's an ode to the amazing work that you all do. Because Preventionists and this, they telling everybody about bodily autonomy. They're telling everybody about protective factors and connectedness and the intersectionality of racism and oppression. You're telling everybody what the data says on how we can prevent sexual violence. You're telling everybody about the accountability that comes with the data, right? Yeah, we're telling everybody. And we're telling everybody, I think that helps us to think about um, what we need to posture towards. One idea that I'd be so interested in sorting through how we posture towards is, wouldn't it be absolutely amazing if healing was available for survivors in all of the realms of the social ecological model? Like, what could healing look like from an individual level, interpersonal, community? What if folks could find healing in their respective communities, societal? How about this? What if we could create healing policies? What? Mic drop, right? And I know people like, what would that look like? Well, we already know what policies not to make. So let's just make the opposite. Let's try that. That could be healing. That could be healing. And these are all possibilities. These are all possibilities. Like, let's create policies that don't break people's soul. How about that? Right? I also think that we have to posture towards prioritizing the care and support for young people. Again, I'll say young people are my people. I love them. I think they are the most creative, yet wealthy is, because y'all parents wealthy. Misunderstood people on the face of the planet. And they're also truth tellers. I appreciate their candor. And I think that we really do have to take care of them. We just wrapped up our Young Advocates Institute, which is much smaller than it's historically been. It's usually 200 kids, and this summer was about 35 of them. And I, what I always leave those spaces with, I leave that space with two truths, right? Because a lot of things can exist at one time. And those truths for me are: one, young people are going to be all right. I do. The kids are going to be all right. And number two, we've got to take really good care of them, um, especially when we start thinking about mental health and wellness. Um, they have navigated through something that we've never navigated through. Um, and the impact of the last 881 days will weigh heavy on them, I believe, for the remainder of their lives. And there really is a mental health crisis. Young people just have missed a lot and are still, I think, moving through collective grief, grief of time, opportunities, spaces of anticipated joy, celebrations, milestones that we all, right, collectively have gotten a chance to think about and remember. Like, we remember what our prom looked like. We remember all the preparation for our high school graduation, and just understanding that those things have looked very different. Even, I would also say, not just our for our project, we work explicitly with 13 to 17-year-olds, but I'm also in my campus work also very, very concerned about the mental health and the wellness of college students. Um, Not only do I provide like that TA and capacities building to those students, to those HBCU campuses, but I'm also an adjunct professor, and some of just overall care and life experiences that they are trying to navigate really has had a long impact on their mental health and wellness. So we have to prioritize taking care and supporting young people. I read this yesterday and I want to share it back with you all too. It was on my Instagram post, and it was um, from a mother who's a part of a R&B group that I really adore, Kindred the Family Soul. And so she was just talking about her son, and she said Gen Y and Z are keenly aware of the language around them and the effects of generational trauma more than any other generation. They feel a lot of pressure to be the ones who figure everything out, to do better, to change things. And with that, also understanding all of those things are deeply overwhelming. And that put me in a place of reflection. When I grew up, I'm a first generational college student. All my mom and my parents for me are my grandmother and my mother. All my parents said to me was like, you've got to make it out of here, right? You've got to make it out of here. And for me, um, making it out also came with a great deal of student loan debt, right? And so now, like, thinking about making it out, it was a lot of pressure to do that. And I did that, and it came with a lot of anxiety, and it was also overwhelming. And so I hope that we can give young people a great amount of grace, and also understand they're so brilliant, because I agree with that statement about them knowing about the language around them and how overwhelming that is, right? It's about breaking cycles. And to break a cycle is not an easy feat. You want to talk about test and testimony. Like, those are hard things to cut off and earth traumatic, harmful experiences, including poverty and opportunity and access. Like, that is very hard. And I think we definitely have put that pressure on young people. And so let's understand that it's overwhelming, and we have to prioritize taking care of young people. I've been on this kick as of lately, and I'm going to see if y'all agree with me on this one. In addition to prioritizing the well-being of young people, I also believe we have to prioritize taking care of the people who take care of people, right? You all are the people who take care of the people. And I think there are a multitude of ways to do that, right? Um, First things first, let's pay the people. Pay the people. The work is hard. This is not an easy job, calling, ministry, purpose. Um, Play that back. Thank you, Courtney. We are prioritizing taking care of the people who take care of people. Like, let's please take care of the people. Let's pay people well. Um, let's, this happens, a trend that always happens in nonprofits is we get more money and then we hire more people. It's great to have human resources and people power in spaces, but how about this? Instead of hiring more people, let's pay the people who are there well, right? Let's make sure that we're creating organizations where people have access to wellness and supports. Make sure that we have not only policies, but practices that allow for people, especially folks who are hearing traumatic um, stories, incidences a lot, to really be like, hey, I need to take a break. And to be able to take that break and take care of themselves without any negative consequences, but also understanding that's really how you take care of the people who take care of the people. Inflation is a real thing, right? It is a real thing. I read this morning that they were like, oh, it's down. And I'm like, what about? Right? Because, we went to bed and things were expensive. And then we woke up the next day and we were taking luxury trips to the grocery store, right? Like, yeah, everything spiked and went up 7%, but pay didn't, right? So I think we have to take care of the people who take care of the people, and we have to have very, very different conversations around pay equity and what that means for folks who do anti-violence work. I think we have to posture ourselves towards really taking care of the psychological, physiological needs of people, air, water, food, shelter, clothing, right? Make sure that folks have access to that. And again, that really leads me back to thinking about the impact of the pandemic and how housing and food insecurities, right, really rose to the top, and we're still sitting there, in all truth and honesty, and really lifting up that, how do we reimagine our work where we take care of the full human being? How do we think about direct cash assistance? How do we reimagine um, shelter services, right? Understanding that shelter services are usually someone's last resort. And how can we make that a better experience? Like, what would it look like if we gave survivors or set up housing where they could live and rebuild their lives for like 2 years without having to worry about those expenses? Direct cash assistance and grant programs where we can help people pay for their utilities or their medicine, right? All of those things. And for me, I'm always connected to these basic needs because I think about my own healing journey and that I didn't do any work on my trauma while I was hungry, didn't have a lot of money, and was worried about where I was going to live. And once those things started to stabilize, it was only then that I was like, yeah, I'll talk to a therapist. Yeah, let's explore medications, right? I got a couple therapists and the meds, right? I got a therapist, I'm always, I believe you can have a therapist for everything, right? So just understanding and being honest about, yay, meds, take them. Um, and, even with that, like my meds conversation in life has always been like interesting because my mom was like, "Oh, you got to just pray about it," and I'm like, "I am." And God made these meds and he made prayer and I'm gonna use them all. I want all the options. I want all the options. He made them. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that. And just being like open and honest about those things that survivors need access to those things. Um, and also, we have to posture towards practicing accountability in daily practice. And what that means is understanding that it's not about getting it right, because there is no right? What it is about is having a right frame, I will say a right frame, about when harm happens and understand that we have life and breath. As long as you have breath in your body, we all have the potential to harm. And so when harm happens, how do we sit with the accountability? Understanding that when harm happens, the harm doer can't, the harm doer can't navigate or try to say, here's the intent, right? Versus the impact, right? We have to sit in the the impact of when harm happens and really apologize and change behaviors so that that harm doesn't happen. And I think when harm happens, we also have to give and extend some level of grace, um, as people understand boundaries and harm and impact, to really sit in accountability. Mhm. I also think that we have to really posture ourselves towards people's lived experiences. I love the opportunity, like my love language is quality time. And so anytime I get time with people, to hear about perspectives that can be polar opposite of mine, like I'm better and I value that. And I think that organizations and our work has to definitely value people's lived experiences, in a because our work is built on people's lived experiences. And so that value should show up in how we are looking to hire and bring people into our organizations, how we think about leadership, how we think about programming, um, all of how we think about evaluation, right? Prevention efforts. I am one of those people. I believe in people's lived experiences. And one of the things that I've learned from young people, and I try to hold true to it, is not creating anything anybody didn't ask for. Right. Oftentimes in programming, we're like, oh, this is a great idea. And it couldn't be a great idea. But my counter is often like, did anybody ask for that? And I think when you value people's lived experiences and ask them for their feedback and what are their contributions to problems and solutions for communities, we will value those people's lived experiences that are different than ours and those who will also stretch us, because that leads us to the possibilities, like the possibilities of what our work can be. We can reimagine that today. That is what this reunion is about. That's what this space is about. That's what this time is about together, right? Us passing the peace with each other is to build the relationships so that the collective, right, who works and stands in the gaps for survivors can really work and walk alongside survivors to build the solutions that our work currently calls for. And at the end of the day, you won't break my soul, you won't break our soul, because our souls have been anchored in love. And for me, um, anchored in love is really the poet's definition, and young people gave this gift to me, so I'm gonna give it to you. Um, in 2020, young people introduced me to bell hooks. And the way that we got to this poet's definition of love for me was in our work with young people, when you have relationships with them, they will tell you the truth. And they said, Miss Tracy, adults, you included, spend a whole lot of time telling us about bad relationships, but nobody has ever told us about a good one. And I sat in that accountability and I said, you're right. And that's also because we still trying to figure it out too. Right. Which for me is always one of those things that we have to give to young people, because we sometimes just pretend as though we actualized out of thin air and had all these things when we're equally, as I get older, I have more questions than I do any leeway into a solution. And so we ended up at Bell Hooks and really talked about love not being a feeling, but an action. And according to Bell Hooks, love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. And to love, you have to surrender and trust another person. Love cannot coexist with abuse. That's the love that I'm talking about. That's the love that I think um, prevention holds in the anti-sexual violence movement. And so our souls are anchored in love. And I realize, and I'll end with this stanza from another song about souls and anchors. And it says, now I realize that sometimes in this life, we're going to be tossed by the waves and the currents that seem so fierce. But love is our anchor, and it keeps us steadfast and unmovable despite the tide. Our souls are anchored with and in love. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'll turn it back over to Emiliano. Thank you so much.